Are you ready for the weekend yet? We have events, news, and a guest for you to enjoy this Lake Life weekend. Hello and welcome to another episode of Lake Life Weekend Podcast. This is Dirk, I'm your host, and we are approaching Weekend 30. This program is presented to you by Jack Travers Realty, and we will have with us Mike Carlson, one of the lead agents of the group. He will share his Lake Life and his background, why he is selling real estate, and he will give you a 2019 real estate market update and many more information. So stay tuned for that, please. If you haven't gone to our Lake Life Weekend website that we just released, please do that too, because we are putting all the events in the area on a map. That means you don't have to search for what's happening in the area in a list format anymore. So you just hover over the map and you will see in a certain pins what's happening around you. And we have organized the pins by week. So our program is always, this is Weekend 30. So we thought we will always publish what's happening in that particular week. It's still growing. We are working on that. It's built from scratch. That means we are able to adjust it. It's not that easy, unfortunately, but it is possible. So if you go there and if you like it or if you don't like it, please be so kind and share your opinion with us. That really helps us. Engage with us too. We will have a submit function for you to tell us what's going on, what you would like to publish. So you can publish your events, whatever it may be, and we will put on the map for you. So help us engage. And you can also email us at any time, hello@lakelifeweekend.com. We are also, last week we had a program with Looney Days. That's coming up. Please, remember that we have a sandcastle contest coming. That is the Saturday of Looney Days weekend. I believe that is August 10th. Yeah. So mark your calendar and please come visit us. You don't need to pre-register. You can just show up with your bucket and shovel. So we're excited for that. And another event that we have been helping to create is the Vegas Open Air. And we have 32 Below and another famous band play on September 1st, Labor Day weekend in Vegas at the ball field. So mark your calendars and check that out. So yeah, I hope to see you more often in the future at any of our events. I don't want to keep this much longer now from our interview with Mike Carlson of Jack Travers Realty. Thank you very much for tuning in, and you have a great weekend ahead. Welcome to our interview part. This week we have here an expert from Jack Travers Realty. Hi, Mike.
Hey, good morning, Dirk. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. Today I'm wearing two hats, in fact, because I'm the broker at Jack Travers Realty, and Mike Carlson is one of the lead agents from our group and a local expert. I am actually not the local expert. That's why I am depending on people like Mike that are from the area, that know the lakes, and actually create the sales team. I am behind the scenes and do the filing, the broker duties, the assistance, and I am doing the marketing for our Jack Travers Realty group. So today we have a little informal sales meeting, maybe, right, Mike?
Sure, let's call it that.
Yeah, and before we, usually my guests, I ask to speak a little bit about themselves, the history, where they're from, why they are in Lakes Country, and then I was hoping we can reflect on this year's market so far and compare it a little bit with last year, and definitely also we have, all our listeners love Lake Life. That's kind of evident. I don't know if all own real property yet on a lake. I know that probably everybody plays on the lake, enjoys the lake. So we could also explain a little bit the approach on and the difference of buying recreational property versus a first residence. I always think, a metro market like Fargo Moorhead or Minneapolis or Chicago, whatever, is just so different. We are serving a unique kind of property. It's a second home to most. Of course, a lot of people are local and live here and enjoy lake life year round as a first resident. But let's just assume we're talking the people with lakeshore that come for weekends or seasonal, like over the summer with the kids. That is just a different approach, and we are a niche service.
Yes, absolutely. This is a very distinct, unique market here.
Right. I always compare it with selling art. I used to be an art dealer in Germany, and it's unique. Every lakeshore, every lake is unique. So that's why we also, Mr. Chivers, in fact, taught me that the Fargo agents, and all respect to the Fargo agents, they have to tackle school districts. They have to tackle the diversion, flooding. So that is a very unique market, and it's a special market. But they don't know how far Heideland is. They don't know the depth of Floyd Lake. They don't know the zebra mussel situation on Big Pine, potentially. Maybe they know that. I'm not saying that they all don't know. But I also assume that a Florida agent is an expert in the Everglades, whatever, and he or she doesn't know Colorado market.
Right.
So although, despite the fact that we are so close, I learned over the past 10 years that we are very distinct and different. So
yes, and you just don't know it unless you live it.
That's really my...
And that's not to be boastful. It's just it's a honest observation,
And I learned that, in particular, since I have been in the Lakes Country market for over 6 years now. And that's where I live. That's what I learned. That's why we're actually doing all this lake life talk, because it is so different. So now
and it's fun. It's a riot. It's a blast.
I love it too. It's a lifestyle. That's what it is. So enough about me. Now about you and the real estate market.
Sure.
Who is Mike Carlson? Where are you from? What brought you to Lakes Country? Tell us your story.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me. I love the show. Really fun to be in the studio with you, Dirk.
Thank you.
So just a quick brief background on me. I'm from southeast of Earhart, just a couple miles. Grew up on top of the hills there, so the lakes were in my backyard.
Earhart on 59.
Earhart on 59, south of Pelican Rapids.
Right.
Yep. So Elizabeth, Fergus Falls, Earhart, Vergus, Dent, Pelican Rapids, Detroit Lakes. That whole area was home to me. And I loved the wildlife scene and nature and biology so much that I actually followed in my father's footsteps and went into wildlife biology to begin my career. And
you went to college where?
At South Dakota State University, and studied wildlife fishery sciences. And then that took me all over the nation for a while. Was in South Dakota for a bit, in Minnesota, Kansas, Alaska. I even did a little bit of that kind of work in Nebraska for a short term. So I've lived a lot of different places. And so I did grow up in Lakes Country, moved away, obviously, for education, and then to follow the love of my life, my wife, Amy. And then ultimately, and I don't want to use the cliche, there's no place like home, but really there's no place like Lakes Country. And I mean that sincerely. I've lived a lot of different places. And there was no question in our mind that once we started growing our family, we're up to 4 kids now, and we wanted to be back in Lakes Country because it's there's just no other landscape or seasonal variance like there is here.
That's a unique spot.
And so I changed careers a couple times, and most recently I was in law enforcement down in Nebraska, and we decided that with our size of our family growing and me being on the road a lot and away from home a lot, it just wasn't the family life we wanted. And we were living out in western Nebraska. It was very dry and just the wide open spaces, and I'm used to big timber and a wet landscape, and that's what I missed. And so we just decided to make a life change, and we're so thankful we did. 2.5 years ago, we moved back to Minnesota, found ourselves on Loon Lake, renting a small cabin just for the interim until we found our permanent residence now on Pearl Lake, just west of DL. So
yeah, so you live on a lake.
Yep.
And your wife spends all the time with the children.
Yep. Stay-at-home mom.
Yeah,
we're
very good. I love that. Yeah. That's how I was raised, I guess. And you connect your children to the wildlife already.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It's a way of life for us, to be frank.
I am surprised, actually, talking about you raising a family here. I'm surprised not more people are fleeing the metropolitans. And I say fleeing because, I mean, I'm a metropolitan kid, I guess. I like the subway and I like the hustle and bustle. I do, but I so much more appreciate what we have here. I am really surprised with all the job opportunities we have in the local area from manufacturing. I mean, everybody is seeking talent. So I still don't understand why not more people are coming. Do you think that there's people arriving that are coming from different places that not you're a return resident? Have you met a lot? I mean, through children playgrounds. Have you met?
Yeah, that's a interesting question. I can't specifically speak to that as far as families relocating from metropolitan. But what I do think is curious is that you know, the lake life, it's one of the dynamics that we often miss is the relational dynamic that lake life offers families and friends. And I think that's why there's such a draw on the weekends. I mean, the traffic out of Minneapolis to get to their lake life weekend cabin is stout. I mean, there is a flood of vehicles exiting the metropolitan area to get to their cabin for the weekend. So that's indicative of a desire to be in this area, for sure. But they're doing it with their family and friends. You know, there's I think more than just getting lakeside and experiencing the many recreational opportunities. I think there's also this very large undertone relational dynamic that we're not maybe acknowledging. But I think people want to be a part of a group. They want to be a part of a family. They want to belong relationally to a group of friends or to their family. And I think that's one of the biggest draws for the lake life weekend experience, and it was what I'm seeing, especially from the metropolitan, you know, because they're really fast paced.
Right. So they use it as a balance. Now that's
very
true.
Very good point. Good point.
That's that's the weekender. I call them the weekenders. That's how the name came up. Lake Life Weekend. It's the weekender guest. Let's say. But I am surprised that not more people take the family like you and plant them here full-time.
That's a good question.
Year-round, because I am an advocate. And then we have the West Central Initiative out of Fergus Falls. It's a development organization, West Central Initiative. And they have this program, Live Wide Open.
Sure.
And I think it's livewideopen.com even. And they advocate 7 counties here. I think they're partners with like 7 counties surrounding Otter Tail County. I cannot name them all, pardon me, but like it's up to Hubbard, it's Becker, it's Otter, and Wadena, and like 3 more counties. And they portrait small communities like, I don't know all the names, so you can research it all. And I'm totally behind them. And I think I can foresee a renaissance of rural America. What I mean by that is where the people reconnect to this rural, beautiful piece of America, a small town, like just considering violence and all those big communities, or traffic jams, or like the non-balance. So again, Lakes Country bears life balance in a different way, and the metropolitans are already seeking it over the weekend, but I think that's not enough. So anyhow,
it might be the winter thing too. A lot of people
scary.
haven't embraced the winter recreational opportunities that Lake Life actually offers. And so
I am a lake life year-round advocate. Absolutely.
Me too.
It's snowshoeing, and there is so much.
And ice fishing.
Fishing, cross-country skiing, and so we love lake life. That's evident. You came back to raise a family. I think you are the perfect example of making it happen. So if there's somebody in Fargo and whatnot, they should consider to relocate and bring and raise their family here, connected to the wildlife and the outdoors.
Absolutely.
So, but like, if, for example, before we talk how the real estate market is doing, if somebody is seeking, what is usually your approach? Let's just say like a first-time home buyers class.
Yeah.
They say, hey, Mike, I want to be on a lake. What do I have to answer?
Yeah, so I usually start with, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what do you truly value at the end of the day in your lake life dream? Is it the water basin itself? Does it, is the water quality and clarity, geographic location of the actual water basin or lake? Where do you want it and what kind? Because there's many different kinds of lakes.
Like what?
Oh, they wide-ranging from crystal clear, big bodies of water, to very fertile, shallow, mesotrophic lakes that experience algae blooms, but they're much more affordable to get on, right? And everything in between.
So the question is, what do you want out of your lake?
Yep, absolutely. Because that's what you're purchasing. Yes, there's going to be a structure there, or you're going to build, but really your dollar is being spent on the body of water and the shoreline, or most of your dollar is being spent there. And so
shoreline.
Yeah, so I always start with what kind of lake, and then what kind of shoreline and topography, because that's critical. If the dollar amount isn't an issue for you, then you can afford level sandy to sandy. So where you go from walking in sand on the terra firma into the body of water, and it's sand, a sandy bottom. Well, those properties are much more desirable and expensive, frankly. So, and they get more affordable the more incline there is to the cabin. Because the water isn't as accessible, right? But some, that's not critical to everybody. That's different for everybody. Some people would rather pay less for the lot and live up high with really big views, for instance. Views.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or they want to be right down on the water as close as they can get.
And
everything everything in between. So, I always start with Mr. and Mr. Buyer. What do you value most? And I just try to have a heart-to-heart with them.
To understand.
And understand their value system.
The values of the pricing, that's of course, location, like in a city, is always location. So how quickly are you to school, interstate, hospital, groceries, and here that is also right. How
geographic location means everything. Yeah, definitely.
In regards of what? How far to what?
Usually to what town or community that they're familiar with, or that they work in, or that their kids go to school in, or that has the amenities they desire.
The Weekender, like, is it restaurants, or how close to Fargo?
Yeah, the Weekender is all over the map as far as I'm concerned. But the year-round resident, they're going to be much more concerned with the commute to whatever town they're traveling to.
If we think of a Fargo person or which are the most desired lakes? Is it still Cormorant?
Yeah, the Cormorant area, absolutely, because it's under an hour to commute to. So they can go there not just on the weekend, but they can go there during the week after work. So that's big for them.
Yeah. And so now we have a couple different types of lake. Right. What are those types?
Well, it starts with the shallow basin that is considered fertile. And you're going to find those, for instance, in southern Otter Tail County, where there's more agriculture surrounding the watershed. And so when you have agriculture surrounding the watershed, apart from trees and grasses and shrubs that are protecting the water, we get more nutrient runoff. The more nutrient runoff into the water, the more fertile the water, so we get more zooplankton and phytoplankton blooms. The more blooms we have, the more the sun heats up the water, right? The more absorbent the water is because it's darker. So the higher the water temperature, the more prolific the vegetative life, and then your water clarity reduces. So that's one type of lake. And then moving up from there, you have the deeper lakes with maybe some holes in them. You call them, 50-foot to 80-foot holes in them, which allows the lake to turn over. And there's different levels of water types within the they're stratified in a sense, and so that water has a chance to turn over.
Oh, the natural turnover.
Yep.
Like in the biology book. Oh, it's the deep hole.
Yep. And then so that helps. And then but there are
for clarity
some
now.
for clarity. And then there's some lakes that are clear, but they are not deep.
Spring-fed.
Spring-fed, and the terra firma surrounding the water, or I should say the watershed for that particular lake, is covered in grasses, shrubs, trees, dense vegetation, which is the filter keeping the nutrients out of that body of water.
And phosphate from the runoff from the rain.
Yeah. Nitrogen and phosphorus is the big two that add to the fertility of the actual lake itself, which is negative.
Yeah. And then clarity as an indicator for fishing quality also?
It can be. Fishing a really super clear lake can actually be pretty challenging.
Right.
Those fish seem to be smarter in a really clear lake.
They can see better, and they're deeper or so.
Yeah, so not necessarily fishing. It's more of a peace of mind for the lake home buyer. Dirty water scares us. We don't like dirty water. Right, so nobody wants to even though the water isn't necessarily dirty and bad for you, it looks dirty.
Perception.
An interesting fact, every lake, no matter how clear it is, goes through algae blooms throughout the year. We just don't, on a clear lake, we just don't notice them, but they're there. On a fertile lake or shallow.
Define algae. There's a ton of different algae, right?
That's a slang. I mean, really, it's a very broad brush, the term algae. It just means phytoplankton and plant matter of any kind.
Okay.
Algae, there's a ton of different kinds of algae, but the term algae bloom just means a increase in vegetative life within the water, suspended in the water. So there's lots of different things to know about lake country, and they're all seasonal too. You could have a really deep, big recreational lake that's deep and clear most of the season, and then, but maybe late fall, if we get a spike in air temperature, they might experience a pretty significant algae bloom, and then the lake home buyers are concerned, like, what's happening to my lake? Well, it's part of the
cycle.
It's part of the cycle. It just happens.
I have that at Lake 7. I mean, Lake 7 is really famous about clarity, and then it is pretty much crystal clear after the winter, and then it goes into this fogginess, and it's just like, and I'm like, what happened? and then the pollens are from the trees, and then there's pollen on the water. Like, my lake is getting destroyed, and then it clears up again.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's amazing. And then we have So I've experienced that for six summers now, and I'm always, but I got used to it. So it's just a cycle.
Yep.
And it's a system.
Yeah.
We just shouldn't disturb it.
Right. Yeah, and that's why the buffer zone, it's called, is so critical to our watersheds. And speaking of watersheds, septics has become a hot topic in lakes country, which you're really only going to know the details of the septic issues if you live here and you work here on a regular basis. And in a nutshell, our governing authorities just care about our watershed. We're placing a really big burden on our soils to protect our water from our sewage, right? I mean, those drain fields are not far from the actual body of water.
Exactly.
And so we're placing a huge burden. We're really asking a lot of that soil
To filter.
to filter. Yeah, it's exactly the earth. We're using the earth as a filter on those drain fields. And so yeah, some of those codes are being more enforced lately, but for good reason. And I understand it's really frustrating for sellers often.
Or buyers.
Or buyers too. Yeah, it's just it can be a very frustrating, convoluted process.
It's a long-term protector, though.
Exactly. Yeah, and it adds to the preservation of our water quality in our lakes, which the only reason we're here is because of the water.
Right.
I mean, so why not do whatever we can to protect it?
So we should honor it and respect it.
Yeah.
Treat it respectfully, I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Circling back, fishing, water clarities, I understand that. But there is different types of lakes. So there's a recreational, like a environmental, and general development.
General development, recreational development, and environmental. Mm-hmm.
Can you briefly explain the differences?
Environmental is those shorelines are just going to be more protected. There's less development on the lake. Recreational.
Setback rules.
Exactly, yeah. And you can't do much to the shorelines.
200 feet setback, I think.
I don't know specifically. It sounds familiar. 200. Recreational development just means there's more development allowed on the lake, but there are minimum width requirements for those lots. I think it's on recreational, it's 150 feet.
Oh, minimum width.
Minimum width. So on a general development, you can have 50-foot widths, right? So, our governing authorities have decided to protect some bodies of water, and other bodies of water we're allowing more development. And that's really, I think, in a nutshell, the different types.
Yeah. No. And so how was this season so far? Like with 2019, we had an extreme long winter.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. It started off somewhat slow, didn't it?
Yeah. It was very slow to start, and I don't know if it was to do with the weather. Some will argue it was, it's cold and rainy for quite a while into our spring, and maybe that slowed our buyers down from putting feet on the ground and hunting cabins. But then it has significantly increased midsummer here, and most of us are very, very busy.
Beginning June, the market really picked up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It wasn't only the missing buyers, but wasn't inventory very low this year?
Yeah, inventory going into the summer, we were pretty concerned. Like, oh man, how are we going to make a living here? But then, like I said, both buyers showed up and sellers showed up. At the 1st of June there, and
there's more properties available.
There is, but I wouldn't state that too strongly. It's still a seller's market. There's not a lot to pick from.
Right.
There's a lot more, but there's still a pretty limited supply to pick from.
Right. So we have a seller's market. Mm-hmm. Do you explain that?
It just means there's more demand and less inventory.
Right.
We've got. I'm working with roughly in all at different levels of motivation, of course, but 30 to 40 lake home buyers or lake cabin buyers. I use the word lake home interchangeably with lake cabin, but most of them are cabin, weekend folks.
You're trying to match 30 to 40 buyers currently with a property.
And it's hard, and they're waiting. They're patient. They know what they want. They're very discerning and careful. They aren't quick to react. And as you know, in real estate, it is highly emotional, which is good. Emotions are a good thing that we have. Mm-hmm. We want to love the property we're buying, of course, but equally so, and maybe even more in today's market, I'm sensing that logistics, financial, wise decision making is trumping the emotional aspect of the purchase.
So more rational.
Yeah, rational. That's a good word.
Is coming into play. Yeah. With the decision.
Yeah, and so then I just tell my sellers, that it is a good, strong market, but you have to be careful. If the buyers, they really have a good sense for something that is overpriced, and if they do sense that, they're not even going to show up to look at it.
That's something too that I, in the past 10 years, looking at real estate and working in real estate for myself. And I have not worked in real estate 20 years ago, but I hear the stories from the 80s when there was just like a big book and the real estate agent was like the book of knowledge.
Okay.
I think buyers have never been more educated than today.
No, right.
I
right.
have met buyers or heard stories. I mean, they have the app on their phone from the county, and they know the tax value and transaction dates before we even had a chance to look it up.
Yeah, and they're contacting neighbors that they don't even know. They're knocking on doors to learn more about that property that's in between them.
They want to know.
Yeah.
They're very informed, and they are somewhat aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good because that also means they're careful.
Yeah.
I like that. I want a careful buyer.
Yeah. And our sellers, I want my seller to get a careful buyer rather than a hasty buyer, because that careful buyer he's more organized. His finances are in
good order.
Good order. Thank you.
And they make a decision that will not fall apart.
Very well. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Those. Yeah. I see the difference. I mean, you got to be cautious who you sell to too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. It's not always purchase price at all. It really is the strength, the totality of the circumstances, the strength of that offer, and you got to choose carefully sometimes.
Right. So going into this midsummer, and as we all know, it's a cycle. The summer is going to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a good time to list property right now?
Yeah, right now is perfect. Buyers, their feet are on the ground. They are shopping right now. Yep, absolutely.
So if somebody is considering to make it his last summer and shutting down the cabin to exit to wherever they want to go, Arizona,
it's definitely not too late. And even if you were to wait a little bit into August, it still isn't too late. If it's the right one for the buyer, like I had said earlier, they're very patient. If it's the right one for them, they don't need to be in it for this summer season. They'll
long term.
Yeah, they'll wait. They'll come open the door next spring.
Right.
As long as they secure it over the winter.
I must say we have a peak usually in March, but then the second strongest peak in sales over the past 6 years that I can reflect on is October. So it's the fall buyers that buy at the end of the summer season.
Yep.
That's what I have experienced. So yeah, listing in July, August, and then even into September, probably listing it in August to shut it down after Labor Day, and then handing it over to the future buyer. They're still excited because they're buying it for the future summers to have. Yeah. So what's your advice for like a seller to get ready for to list?
That's in a nutshell, the word clean comes to mind. Despite the condition of the property, despite if it needs upgrades or if the deck stairs are falling off, most buyers can see past that as long as the property itself, the land, and also the interior is clean and in somewhat order, some kind of order. If it's been neglected and it's literally dirty, buyers have a really hard time imagining themselves there. And I know that sounds maybe overly simplistic, but the word clean and order is critical to a buyer. When they walk through that door, are they stepping over garbage? Or do they have the freedom to walk through and not feel dirty? That's critical.
That comes to the respect of the property from the previous owner also.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very good point. Now, there's a lot more that goes into when I actually counsel a seller when they get ready to sell. It's a pretty long conversation, but if it's a quick conversation, the word clean, you have to clean it up. Do everything you can to get rid of the clutter, to get rid of personal items, and just clean. Apart from that, if you want to take it to the next step, it definitely helps to, and what I always do, I hire a professional stager and a professional photographer. And there's costs associated with that as well. I absorb a lot of that myself, but when a client or a seller trusts me with their asset, I don't take that lightly, and I work really hard with them to make their property exceedingly presentable, because they are competing with other properties. We have to remember that, and we need to make their property the best it can be and put it in the limelight.
The best it can be, though, because I want to be truthful. You're not a magician.
No.
And I always beg for sellers to be realistic. Right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's good advice.
Because you can have spent 40 summers with the family at a certain location, and yes, that is your heaven, paradise. It may not be the same to the future owner. And of course, we are extremely subjective.
Sure.
And emotional with what we are giving away. And I think when it comes to selling your valuable property, I don't want to talk anything down, but I just always expect realistic and trust in the market experience that somebody like you have. Correct?
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, we don't control the market. At the end of the day, it's only worth what a buyer is willing to pay for it.
The market.
Yeah, that darn market.
So you prep your clients selling to spiff it out, make it as organized. Major repairs, actually investments, or
it depends.
Depends.
Yeah, it really depends. If they are listing at a higher price, or trying to really test the market at a higher price, and they have some major obvious repair, you need to take care of that right now. If they're being much more realistic and entering the market much more fair or even below tax assessed value, then no, that's fine. Let the new buyer decide if they're going to fix it or not.
Improve.
Really comes down to the motivations of the seller. How long do you want to test the market for, and what do you value most? The higher the price, the longer you're going to wait. So
there's only two variables, right?
Yeah.
Price and time.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that sums that up. But
yeah. So we have a lot of buyers to match with property.
We do. A lot. There are a lot of buyers, Dirk. I can't emphasize that enough. There really are.
So if a seller is ready to close out for the season, they're more than welcome to contact you. And I must admit, and I want to repeat that, I'm not from here. And I'm just amazed on the knowledge of algae bloom and all that. And I think that's so critical. And I think, I mean, like, just to point that out, the group that you are with and the colleagues that you have at Jack Chivers Realty, you are working together. It's not as competitive in-house, I find. I think the sales group is highly educated. And I think we are the only agency in Lakes Country where each and every agent has a college degree, a bachelor degree, and puts them up in experience and approach, analytical approach. I think that is of great value to your colleagues. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a level of genuine care for the client more than the paycheck at the end of the day. It's a small community, and we do care about each other. And real estate is a convoluted beast sometimes, and you really do need an agent that is in it for the right reasons. So my experience with this group is just that there's a vein of genuine care streaming throughout the whole team. Yep.
Well, I really appreciate that insight, and I'm glad you came in at the right time. We have summer and peak. And you mentioned you live on a lake. I often ask the outgoing interview guests, what do you value about lake life, and how do you spend your lake life?
I think the moments I find that I value the most are those really small moments in the kitchen overlooking the lake, or those really brief moments out in the yard, just having the view and seeing my children down at the water's edge catching frogs and getting muddy, and just having my lot is elevated, so I've got an elevated view of the shoreline and the lake. And I think just in those quiet moments, having that perspective and looking out over the water and the dog playing with the kids, I think to me that's the, I know it sounds kind of simple, but there's such beauty in that. And I'm not trying to over romanticize it at all. It's just it's what I think I value the most in those quiet moments.
I can see that. I also like this area gives to me is the connectivity to nature and the body of water. I love water since I'm a child. I built my first pond out of a sandbox. Like when I was 5, 6, the sandbox time was over, and I put a foil in there and made a pond out of it. And then I checked it every morning before I went to school, to kindergarten. And there was this huge frog in there. I just remembered I got scared. But I always loved water. I built ponds my whole life. Like everywhere we moved, I had to build a pond, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. My biggest pond was like 24 feet. It sounds like nothing, but I was with a foil. It was artificial. So I was a pond builder by heart. Okay. So I am just amazed by the look of the water and the fish inside, and I can see that. So having 4 children and a dog and a wife, and so you don't need a jet ski. You don't need to be loud.
No, not yet. I'm sure in time my kids will demand some sort of
water sport.
Yeah, big motored boat or jet ski. But for now, I really like those tranquil moments, and it is balance for me too. You know, a very busy life with 4 kids, and just being lakeside. There's something very tranquil and peace-giving about it.
Rejuvenating. Yeah. Well, I appreciate a lot you coming in. People can find you easily, jacktraversrealty.com. We have an agent section, and they can seek you out, read a little bit more about your story. And maybe somebody's interested to contact Mike and talk about listing or even buying. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for coming. You have a great
Thank you again.
weekend ahead.
Likewise.
Thank you. Yeah, this was already our newest episode of the Lake Life Weekend podcast. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Tune in again next week with another great guest and updates. Always check out our website, lakelifeweekend.com, and if you have some comments, please feel free to email us at hello@lakelifeweekend.com, and you have a wonderful weekend ahead.